The Journal of Electroanalytical Chemistry, where Pons and Fleischmann originally published, also continues to publish. Both positive and negative articles. And they should both be published. We should know what does work and what doesn't work. But the answer to cold fusion is not to point to this supposed mountain of cold fusion negative experiments and say, see, I told you it doesn't work because we all know nuclear reactions can't occur at room temperature. No, the answer is look at what does apparently work and try to make it work even better. And that's what's happening in cold fusion. All the negativists, pretty much, had stopped their experiment in 1989 or 1990. They're gone. They're not even looking at the data anymore. Another journal, Japanese Journal of Applied Physics, is publishing Fusion Facts newsletter out of Salt Lake City. And last but absolutely not least, 21st Century Science and Technology, which is published by a political group with which I am definitely not affiliated, but which is to be absolutely commended for publishing a fine, continuing series of information on cold fusion. I only wish that Nature and Science had as much coverage of cold fusion as 21st Century Science and Technology does. And there are other magazines too, and I hope I haven't slighted anyone. The Japanese publications in Japan are great. There are about 6 cold fusion books in Japan now, by the way. Mostly positive. Okay, I'm going to say one thing and then Giuliano take over. Just in essence, what is the evidence? The evidence is this massive heat, as I told you. You can't do this with chemistry. There's no explanation for it. And at the same time, in similar systems, or simultaneously, a weak trace of things like tritium production, neutrons, low level, or burst phenomena, and then charged particles from thin films. These things have no conventional explanation, but it doesn't mean you have to repeal the laws of physics. You just have to look at quantum mechanics a little differently, perhaps, put things together with building blocks like lots of fine theorists, like Dr. Preparata here and Dr. Chubb in the audience have done, and try to explain it. And believe me, there are excellent explanations. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Preparata. And then after he makes his fiery remarks, or perhaps less fiery remarks,
icy
remarks, I will come back to make further fiery remarks.
This time it would be very icy. Okay. So, maybe I can stay here, or you want me to do that?
Why not the podium?
Well, I'm sorry I came late, but actually I was doing what I believe was my duty in trying to talk to the people who have the responsibility to sort of make society work. Capital here, to just let them know that there are things and that are happening, and presumably their usual institutional channels of advice have somewhat been clogged recently, and in such a way that important information didn't pass. I think this is what Dr. Mallove has been telling you since the beginning of his presentation. So I spent essentially 2 days of my time on this visit in the United States really trying doing this kind of a service to a friendly nation like the U.S. is, and also very familiar to me as I have spent a large part of my early career in this country, and I have learned to appreciate its openness and its high commitment to fundamental values. However, these fundamental values, I must say, have seen a little bit less clear in the eyes and the mind of a certain number of colleagues who have now the responsibility to advise the government and to sort of hand out research funds to the academic and scientific community of this country. And this is the thing that Mallove was talking about, and I really have he knows the situation here much better. I know for myself that we are under very difficult conditions as well in Italy, and which is, however, the only country in Europe where there is some kind of effort along the lines of cold nuclear fusion. But, and I think the reason is highly dependent on the fact that the American scientific community really has an enormous amount of influence and power as well through its great institution of the journals of the American Institute of Physics and the various journals, conferences, and the very tight-knit community of physicists and chemists. So therefore, their advice certainly comes to our country, our countries, and has a tremendous amount of weight. So, the reason of my being here, therefore, is to present to you facts from a recent conference that we have held according to all the well-established procedure of pure scientific conferences. Unfortunately, the conference in Salt Lake City, which was meant to be a good scientific conference, somewhat deteriorated, I believe, at least this is my opinion, finding myself in the hallway, talking to journalists up to incredible hours in the morning, deteriorating in a kind of, circus of press and scientists, and also maybe it was a little bit too early, I must say also, to try and make a fixed point, try to reach a conclusion about this very disquieting and very strange, anomalous results that people were finding in the metal deuterium system, because this is essentially what we're talking about. In Como, only very few journalists were there, and the ones who were there, and I know a few of them who were there, were quiet. They let the scientists talk. They didn't interfere with their proceedings, with their way of approaching the field. There were 5 days of very intense discussion, confrontation, presentation, reviews. Everybody had a chance of intervening in the discussion, which was never really cut out. So at the end of this scientific, we came out with the conclusion that this results, this strange effect that were first reported and announced to the world by Fleischmann and Pons, were indeed real things, and they were very worthy of. They deserve to be looked into it, and the research effort ought to be escalated. And I think that this was the real, in my mind, fundamental point of this conference and of its conference proceeding, to which we have appended, given a title, which really reflects what went on in Como in the beginning of July 1991, and that is the science of cold fusion. After so many gossips, so many confrontation on a ludicrous point, we finally came to a point where we could serenely, lucidly discuss our differences, our points, scientifically, and just say exactly what the results were, and say what the ideas in order to explain them were, and in the most straightforward and I think time-honored tradition of scientific interchange and intercourse. And so, I mean, just having said that, I would try and briefly describe the contents of this book, what are the highlights of this book, just to show you. This book, by the way, has been published by the Italian Physical Society, so it's a book of their collection of conference proceedings. It has been refereed,